Most games make it easy to be a magician. You just equip your favorite spell, aim it at the target, and with the press of a single key let loose a storm of devastation that leaves but ashes and giblets in its wake. In my opinion, there's a shortage of good games where spellcasting is taken to a more intense level. One of the best examples of what I mean by that is Magicka, a game where you have to combine the individual elements of each spell with the very real possibility of casting something that is extremely hazardous to your own health. In order to be a serious wizard here, you'll need concentration, memorization, and cleverness, although sometimes a flurry of keys pressed in a sheer state of panic can somehow end up being effective too. Before we figure out the specifics of how spellcasting is done, let's take a little tour of the game world, and most importantly, there's someone I want to introduce to you.
Melde, Jeva Vlad, or Jeva Null Vampir.
Vlad will be your mentor and guide through this game, and no matter what you hear, he's definitely not a vampire. At all. Vlad explains to you that the greatest threat to the world, an evil wizard called Grimnir, has been recently dealt with, so all should be well. And yet villagers are reporting evil forces moving through the countryside. He feels that something sinister is behind all this and wants you to investigate. Whether you play by yourself or in co-op with up to 4 players total, you begin the game as a student in a magic academy known as the Order, where you have already studied long enough to know the basics of spellcasting. You can easily tell you've been given masterful training under the tutelage of the mighty headmaster, and just by listening to him you can tell he's the best headmaster ever.
You super Luke. Do to your super Luke, Ramu. You super Luke. Yeri shake. You broke for Rick de Blur. You rumba yet stir and Alraheim. You repulsed. You so Drufus. You never leave Abraham. Duh, ye super Luke.
Those are some impressive credentials, Headmaster. The language spoken in this game, as you can hear, sounds like a bunch of gibberish nonsense. Actually though, it is based on Norwegian or Swedish, with other Scandinavian, English and maybe even German influences thrown in the mix. Some of the sentences sound to me like just straight up Swedish, but there's definitely a lot of made up nonsense too. Before setting out on your quest, there's a world-saving party, or Dunka Dunka, going on downstairs. Dunka is Swedish for punch, or as I believe in this case, bash by the way. The party gets a little too rowdy, and you get blown through the floor into the cellar, which is the tutorial level. The humor in this game is awesome. It's got a lot to do with the tone of voice and pacing of how people talk and act in this game. I like how they just board up the floor within like 15 seconds of you dropping down there, like you'll be fine, even though there's monsters like goblins and an actual beholder in this particular cellar. If you've played the Dungeons & Dragons role-playing games, you know a beholder is nothing to scoff at. Also, once you get back up to the party, nobody seems all that concerned about what happened to you in the basement. Everyone just keeps on partying and rocking to the tune of this awesome wizard band playing techno music. Speaking of the music, this is a soundtrack that I often find myself listening to in the background while I'm working and traveling and so on. It's got medieval epic vibes and it suits the game's pace of combat perfectly. Gets me hyped up for blasting enemies with the raw power of the elements. The game is absolutely chock-a-block full of memes, back from 2011 and before. There's references to popular movies, familiar voice clips, and all kinds of recognizable events going on everywhere. You're armed with a staff and a sword, and better substitutes for both of these might be dropped by enemies or found as hidden treasures in the game world. A lot of these are references to popular items as well, like King Arthur's sword in the stone, or a red lightsaber straight out of Star Wars. These special weapons are great fun, and sometimes can even change core mechanics of the game. Especially in solo play, these weapons can be hard to keep, because you drop them on death. There's also a fairy, which can be easily recognized as Navi from The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. She starts following you when you touch a checkpoint and will revive you one time if you get blown up. The enemy variety is mostly based on fantasy monsters. There's orcs, trolls, undead horrors, elementals, evil wizards, ents, yeti, and of course gigantic boss monsters like this overgrown worm creature. Looks like tough customers, so how are we going to deal with them? Let us now take a calm and structured look at how spellcasting is done properly. Just as a warning, this calmness will probably fly out the window when the game starts throwing its hardest fights your way. First off, you have different controls for different targeting options. You can cast spells as frontal attacks, area attacks around you, or target them at your own character. In addition to these options, you can insert the spell into your sword and release it by swinging it, causing the spell to erupt in front of you from the weapon. If you haven't got any specific element chosen, you will just use a force push that knocks enemies backwards and throws stuff around. Now, in order to make some proper spells, you will need to apply one or more of the 8 elements in the game to the cast bar appearing below your character. The elements are shown here. There's water, life, shield, cold, lightning, arcane, which I oftentimes refer to as death, rock, and fire. Luckily, the keys required to apply the elements are shown next to each symbol. Without them, oh boy, that would have been quite the learning curve. To make things complex, different elements have inherent shapes when you cast them as a frontal attack. Let's see what they look like. Rock is thrown as a boulder. Life and arcane are beams. Water, cold, and fire are jets or streams. And lightning is conductive and forks around, chaining to multiple targets. You can use multiples of the same element to make the spell stronger and extend their size or reach. Most enemy types, especially later in the game, resist one or more of these elements partially or even fully. Some enemies have only one weakness, and they might be mixed in with other enemies who have a different weakness. Some elements cancel each other out, like earth cancels lightning because it gets grounded. Fire cancels cold, and life cancels arcane. You just simply cannot add these elements to the casting bar at the same time, or if you cast them at their opposing element on the field, they nullify each other's effects. Shield is kind of the odd exception among all the elements. It projects energy barriers of different shapes and different properties depending on how you use it. Shield also cancels itself, so you can't make like a mega shield with 5 uses of the shield element. With just this basic setup, you could already cast all sorts of ruin on your enemies, but the real trick is combining the elements together, which makes for an absolutely astounding amount of possible spell combos. In fact, I have a feeling I might not have yet managed to figure out all of them despite playing this game all the way through 5 times in total. The elements have a ton of functions in the game world too. I'll do my best to summarize most of these as briefly as possible. Water makes characters wet, thus more resistant to fire, but you can be frozen into a solid block by cold damage, or electrocuted for heavy extra damage by lightning. Lightning also stuns whoever it hits briefly, causing an interruption to spellcasting. If you try to cast electricity spells while wet, you end up damaging and potentially killing yourself. Water can also put out flames on your own character, enemies, or the terrain. Becoming chilled with cold slows your character down by a lot. It affects the speed at which you can cast spells too. While chilled, you also resist fire a little bit better. Cold spells can freeze liquid surfaces, so you can create paths across water, lava, or even wine. Whoops! Oh well, I went in the drink this time, literally. Cheers! Now, fire is of course the most volatile and panic-inducing element of them all. Your character and most enemies will start running around in a state of panic when they catch fire. You can still cast elements, but you cannot control your own movement. Fire damage starts to increase gradually, so the longer something is burning, the more damage it takes in total. Fire can also thaw out frost and cold effects, as well as dry out anything that's wet. That's most of the elemental combos, but there's still 2 extra added complications. Look what happens if you try to apply fire together with water into the cast bar. It becomes the element of steam. It's like a more forceful, pressurized version of water. It also deals heavy damage to most enemy types that goes past the simple water immunity aura. The other complication I mentioned happens when you add water together with cold into the cast bar. It becomes the element of frost, which can freeze enemies faster than cold and also deals way more damage. All the cool kids use frost instead of cold. That's most of the elemental stuff summarized, but the shield element deserves a closer look too. The basic shield is a reflective material that protects you from direct hits. If you cast shield on yourself, it becomes an external armor. If you cast it in front of yourself, it becomes an arc. If you apply it to your sword and use it, it becomes a straight wall. And if you cast it as an area attack, it becomes a dome. Some enemy attacks fall from the sky directly above you, so the dome can protect your head from these falling objects. Shields also reflect any beam type attacks back, like a mirror reflects light. The beam reflect patterns can get pretty crazy. Also, beams can merge together to make bigger beams. If the elements of the beams are incompatible with each other, or if they collide together with a certain angle, there's a huge explosion. Egon from Ghostbusters would be proud. Whew, it's finally time to do some experimentation with the different element combos, because we got plenty to work with here. Let's start with the shields. You can start adding other elements to the basic shield spell to give you a full immunity aura to, let's say, fire. You can make the aura bigger by adding more of the element, which allows you to protect your co-op buddies. If enemies wander inside this radius, however, they will become immune, just like you are. This can get really complex if you add multiple different elements into the same aura. You could protect yourself simultaneously from, let's say, steam, fire, arcane and electric damage. The next big thing is introducing the element of rock to your shields. This is one of the main ways to deal humongous damage. Enemies tend to have a tough time getting around them, so if the rocks are on fire, they will catch fire over and over again. If you cast the rock and shield elements on yourself, you become encased in a stone armor, which also makes you super heavy. You can also make this happen with the element of frost, and it'll cover you in icicles that hurt enemies that come into contact with you. You can also add the elements of life or arcane to your shields, which turns them into a minefield. Mines explode, tossing smaller enemies all over the terrain and causing big fall damage. By combining shield, rock and arcane, we can make explosive arcane rocks, and with shield, rock and life, we can make healing rocks. To get little rain clouds in front of you, just make a shield with the water element. You can also make a wall of electricity, frost, fire or steam. Since we're talking about frost, check out what happens if you try to shoot the frost element forwards. You can even make arcane icicles, life icicles, or even cold electric arcane icicles. You could drop these icicles on your own head if you're not careful. Well, let's make a fireball. Or how about a steam fire arcane ball? Just firing rocks really hard can start to look like you're using a medieval super-powered sniper rifle. Most elements can be used as an area effect as well. Or you could make some elaborate beams. You can also make an energy saver by adding elements to your sword. You can also send elements from your sword as a beam that runs along the ground by adding rock to it. As you can see, the spell options are extremely varied, to say the least. There's already so much casting options that sometimes I just stare blankly at the keyboard and try to force my brains to form some kind of functional attack, but there's still more. You can cast magics or spellbook spells too. As a few examples, there's Rain and Blizzard, which covers the entire screen with water and frost respectively. Thunderbolt, which causes the highest elevated enemy in front of you to catch a literal lightning bolt to the dome. Boom! There's also Slow Time, Teleport and Haste, which are all extremely useful mobility spells. Co-op is the most hilarious way to play this game, and I can highly recommend it. Just hope that your friend actually wants to finish the game and not troll you by throwing rocks in your face purely by accident. Back when I used to play this online with random players, there used to be a lot of mishaps. Players typically find a few spell combos that are so devastating that they become their go-to combinations whenever they can't think of anything else to cast. Your fingers develop a muscle memory for the best spells. I like how the game throws curveballs at you though, because there are very few combos that work absolutely everywhere. The real beauty of this game is the frantic pace in the fights, especially the more crowded, complicated fights. I also like fights where some beast is trying to trap you in a corner and you're running from it, constantly teleporting to safety from its clutches. This game will get your fingers warmed up, your brains warmed up, and if you're wearing wizard robes while playing this, you should be pretty warm too. Magicka, what are you doing to me? I feel like I'm playing the damn piano at this point, but one thing is for sure. I've learned to spell. This game entered the top 100 list out of sheer fun factor. It's really engaging because there's no way to just face roll your way through it. It's one of those games where finishing it gives you a sense of achievement, and sharing that experience with a friend makes it all the more worthwhile. I hope more games in the future take notes of what went right with this masterpiece, and some of the things I mentioned liking in this game will surely pop up in upcoming episodes towards the top games on the list.